The former Chief Minister of the Northern Territory Adam Giles told the Royal Commission he could not recall details more than 40 times in 2 hours on Friday morning. While being questioned on his knowledge of the crisis in juvenile detention, Giles, who was the chief minister when some of the most high-profile incidents occurred in juvenile detention, also provided no statement or documentation to the Royal Commission, and had not followed any proceedings to date before his appearance on Friday. Previous witnesses, including former ministers and department executives, have provided at least one written statement, if not dozens of annexures and addendums. Following the broadcast of a Four Corners episode on alleged abuses, Giles personally called for a royal commission to examine the issues, saying, "As a dad and an Aboriginal man, watching those Aboriginal kids getting thrown down like that, I had a lump in my throat, chills up my spine." On Friday, Giles was quizzed extensively on the briefings he had received before the broadcast, and policy decisions and discussions. He repeated more than 40 times that he was unable to recall details or answer a question, on some occasions because he did not have a document in front of him, or could not see that it had been signed, and therefore verified. Giles said he remembered visiting the Dondale Detention Center with his minister, John Elferink, "but I don't have any recollection about what I saw, where I saw it, or any other details." This included exactly when the visit occurred, whether he spoke to detainees, saw the Behavioral Management Unit or the High Security Unit, or met the superintendent. He had no recollection of receiving a flash brief on the tear-gassing incident in August 2014. Despite emails shown to the Commission from corrections executives requesting it be sent to Giles as a matter of urgency, nor was he told of allegations including that fruit was thrown at detainees, and that a guard made a detainee eat bird feces. Questioned about a briefing paper, Giles said he didn't recall being made aware of concerns anti-detention facilities weren't meeting critical duty of care elements. Asked about Aranda House, an Alice Springs facility used to house juvenile detainees subject to much of the Commission's concerns, Giles said he didn't think Aranda House was a youth facility. "How can that be that you, as Chief Minister, were not aware of what appears to be a major shortfall in an important portfolio within your government?" asked counsel assisting the Commission, Peter Morrissey SC. Giles replied, "Not everything makes its way up to you. You have ministers responsible for individual portfolios who look after those portfolios. And of course you have a CO, or Commissioner of Corrections, and all the staff who have a responsibility in that care." Giles told the Commission he first learned about the recommendations and content of reports on the conditions, failings and alleged abuses in detention including the Vita Review, the Carney Report, the Children's Commissioner's Report and a report by the Professional Standards Unit, after he called for the Royal Commission. He was previously aware of training issues but only in a budgetary sense, and couldn't recall being made aware of shortfalls otherwise by Elferink, the Commission heard. He couldn't recall specific budgetary requests by corrections for a youth justice precinct, and increased staff and operations. Giles also denied he required a 20% reduction from corrections, as was testified by previous witnesses. He told the Commission he had not seen any of the footage in the Four Corners episode, Its broadcast. Giles had made the same claim in the initial aftermath of the show's airing, but a few days later admitted to media he had seen the tear-gassing footage. At the time of calling for the Royal Commission, Giles said he was appalled by the broadcast and believed there was a culture of cover-up and that the government had been misled. On Friday he told the commission, he said, because he'd thought the footage was from the previous 6 months and now believed he got that wrong. Under earlier questioning, Giles denied he had pushed for harsher law and order measures and said his focus was on reducing incarceration and recidivism. Giles was taken through a pre-2011 election opposition paper named Tough Love Beyond Wildman River, proposing diversionary programs such as boot camps. Giles repeatedly said he focused more on adult crime than juveniles, and said there was no deliberate strategy driving tough on youth crime policy. He said most of his law and order commentary had been about adults more than children, and he said he did not recall speaking a lot on youth matters, but said any commentary would have been either by the corrections minister or from him as the local member for Braidling. Media reports from the time of his chief ministership record frequent calls by him or his ministers for specific measures against youth offenders, including taking them into child protection and imposing tougher bail conditions for bad youths. When in opposition, Giles told Parliament that if he was corrections minister, he would build a big concrete hole and put all the bad criminals in there. The commission is also expected to look at a Facebook post by Giles in May 2016 titled "Enough is Enough," and which proposed removing the presumption of bail for bad and rogue juvenile offenders. Giles was the last of high-profile witnesses to be called the commission to answer questions specifically on detention, and followed appearances this week by Elferink and the former Corrections Commissioner Ken Middlebrook. Thursday heard from Elferink, who also could not recall receiving briefings on several key reports into the state of detention, but said he was aware of the general issues. He said he was disturbed by the state of detention when he became minister, and sought to make improvements to conditions but did not receive financial support from his cabinet. He said he had taken Giles on the tour to Dondale to demonstrate the need, resources, but Giles was reluctant to acquiesce to the notion more money should be spent. Elferink said he knew there was no evidence that harsh sentencing and tough treatment impacted on youth crime or recidivism. Despite this, he contributed a list of tough on crime suggestions to Giles before the 2016 election, included removing a legislative notion: detention should be a last resort for youth. The commission was shown in October 2015 a mail from Elferink's chief of staff at the time, Julian Swinstead, which declared it is time the public knew what little cunts these kids are. Under questioning from Felicity Graham, representing the Central Australian Aboriginal Legal Services, Elferink denied the language reflected a culture within his office that tolerated, moreover, promoted, a public demonization of young people to whom the government owed a duty of care. He said his language had no substantive impact on detainees. The next hearing is scheduled to begin on 8 May, and will examine the pathways that led to detention, with evidence on policing, charging, and arrest, diversion programs and youth conferencing. It will also look at the justice sector from the perspective of lawyers and prosecutors. Before moving on to matters of child protection, questioning of Giles continues on Friday.